Wobbie. Put our level, testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Hello, Josh. You good, Drew? Today the LNP has a question on behalf of every frontline service provider, every young mum, every Queenslander. How many maternity services have been placed on bypass or reduced capacity in Queensland in the last 9 months? That's the question. And today the Minister conducted another press conference, and the theme was how dare people ask questions about the services. What Queenslanders want are the answers. And the more the government personally attacks me, the more that I will stick up for the frontline staff and the patients who are demanding answers to this. The more the government make it personal, the more we intend to get the answers and the need for a world-class health service for Queenslanders who rely on it. The documents that have been released show a culture of covering up. It shows an inability to be upfront with people, and it shows that if you can't even acknowledge a crisis, you're never going to fix it. And on behalf of every Queensland mum, every Queensland clinician, the question is, how many services have been placed on bypass? How many services have been reduced? And what is the government's plan to ensure that Queenslanders get access to a world-class health service no matter where they live? Christian's joining us on another matter, but I'll get him to say a few words on that as well.
Before I address an issue related to education, I watched the government's press conference and the Labor Health Minister. Labor's Health Minister is clearly out of her depth. There is a crisis in our hospital and health system which has been burning across Queensland for a long period of time, and she's clearly not listening to doctors, of which I'm a doctor. She's not listening to nurses and allied health professionals across the system, and I know that because they're reaching out all the time asking for help. And whether that's related to ambulance ramping, whether it's related to longer wait lists that are occurring in Queensland, whether issues related to workforce or maternity services right across Queensland that have been under significant stress. So what I'd say to the Health Minister is start listening to the frontline clinicians, start listening to those patients who are sitting on the back of ambulances or waiting at home, not able to get ambulances, and start working on fixing the problems that matter to patients, to Queenslanders, and importantly, to doctors, nurses and allied health professionals. Now, in relation to mobile phones in schools, the Liberal National Party has had a long-term policy position that we empower our frontline principals, teachers and individual school communities to make those decisions. But we certainly know that many schools are moving towards banning mobile phones in those individual school communities, and in New South Wales, the recently elected government there intends to implement a ban. So we'll be watching the progress and the roll out of that with interest, but we will continue to engage with principals and teachers and parents on this matter because it's very important that we have evidence-based policies that work and work within our schools, and we'll continue to consult and listen to key stakeholders, to parents and teachers.
So Dr. Rowan, just to clarify, I guess you're saying that the LNP and Labor have the same position on mobile phones?
The LNP has had a long-standing position of empowering individual school communities, those principals, to make those decisions within their individual school communities. That's been our position. But we consult, we listen, and certainly we're going to be carefully evaluating what's happening in New South Wales and keep an open mind. Well, what we find here in Queensland is that the Premier always defers responsibilities to other areas. It's always someone else's decision to make. The Queensland Government should be consulting and listening to key stakeholders, to parents and to others in relation to their policy formulation, and that's what the LNP does. We will continue to listen and consult with key stakeholders, with parents, with principals, school communities into the future, and as I said, we'll be carefully evaluating what's happening in New South Wales, given that they intend to implement a ban as a recently elected government. our policy position is to empower individual communities to make those decisions. That's been our position, and that's our current position. Well, I'm a parent and I have teenage children myself, and so I've been very concerned about bullying that takes place using mobile phone devices, and I think more broadly across society, people being off their phones is a good idea. There's more to life than just being available on your mobile phones. So this is a broad policy conversation, and the LNP will continue to engage and consult and listen to people. But as a parent myself, I have concerns in relation to mobile phone usage and the amount of time that young people do spend on those devices. But as I said, we'll be watching what happens in New South Wales. We'll be carefully evaluating that, and here in Queensland we'll continue to listen and to consult with key stakeholders about our policy position.
Other states have had a ban for a while, including Victoria. Isn't there already enough evidence out there to come to a decision?
Well, certainly there can be differences that exist in different school communities and particular reasons as to why individual school communities have made particular decisions. But again, we've been evaluating that information. We've been evaluating what's been happening in other states. We've obviously been carefully monitoring the announcements that were made in New South Wales. And as I said, we'll be evaluating and looking at that rollout here in Queensland and continuing to listen and engage with school communities and key stakeholders. Well, at the moment, individual school communities can make those decisions, and there are individual schools that have already made those decisions to ban mobile phones in their schools, and they've done that in consultation with their individual school communities. So that's been our position, that individual school communities can make those decisions. But in relation to a blanket ban, we'll be carefully monitoring what's happening in New South Wales, and we'll continue to engage with stakeholders here in Queensland and listen to what they have to say. It's very important that we listen to experts and we listen to evidence and make those decisions, but it's also important to empower individual school communities.
Thanks, Maria. Thanks, Christian. Thanks. Well, you've got the documents. You've seen them, and the minister doesn't want to use the word crisis. Well, her own office is using it, and doctors and nurses are using it. And if you're not willing to admit there's one, you're never going to be able to fix it. Now, I'm not going to return serve and get personal. What I'm going to do is strengthen my resolve to ask the questions on behalf of the doctors and the nurses and the mums that are asking us to take up the fight for them. And to suggest that we haven't been doing that, well, I've got a question on notice where we simply asked that exact question that I asked you today, and that is how many services have been on bypass or had reduced services. Now, the response from the Health Minister was to not answer that and to say that that would take too much resources. Well, I would question whether or not a Health Minister isn't aware of the service capacity at the hospitals that they oversee. And there's a culture at the moment of cover-ups, and the documents that we've revealed in the last 48 hours show that. And that's never going to be able to heal the health crisis if you can't admit there's one. And we are determined to keep fighting for this, and I'm not going to make it personal. But it is something that we're passionate about, because young mums deserve to have a baby where, when and how they choose. And we're not talking about places that haven't had access to these services before. We're talking about places like Gladstone, like Chinchilla, who generationally have had these services, and they deserve to have them. And we're going to double our resolve and make sure that we keep pursuing these issues because they matter.
Does it concern you that we're seeing a rise in flu cases and just looking at the impact that could have?
Of course, and our health system was in crisis before COVID, and because of an inability to plan, it's tested by things like the flu. So individuals have to do all they can to stay as healthy as possible. My message to the state government is listen to the solutions to get the health system up to scratch, because it is already buckling under pressure, and the doctors and nurses deserve a lot better than that, and so do the patients.
And do you support maybe a wider program for free flu shots? There was that temporary free flu shot program last year.
We'd certainly take the advice from the professionals on that, and I noted some of the comments from the Chief Health Officer today. I think that's fair and reasonable, and you know, you have experts in the field for that very reason.
David, do you think it's time that Queensland had a new health minister?
We've consistently said that, but what I'm trying not to do is get into a tit for tat and make it personal. Now, the Shadow Health spokesperson's given you a shopping list of reasons why that should be the case. What my focus has to be is on raising the issues, but also raising solutions, and we have consistently done that. Every time we've pointed to a problem, we've also pointed to a solution. And the way that press conference unfolded half an hour ago, I don't think there'd be a Queenslander who was watching that who says, well, I have faith in this person to address a crisis, when the word crisis can't come out of the minister's mouth, despite the fact that her own office describes it as that. We need to admit that there is a problem in Queensland health, and there has been a deterioration in figures for 8 years, year on year, and Queenslanders are living it. They're living it at the end of an ambulance ramp, they're living it waiting for elective surgery that never comes, they're living it when they're that frontline staff member who go to work and just feel battered and broken. And we're going to stack up for all of those people. And if that means that there are personal barbs that come my way, that's okay. But if it can lead to a system that improves, and if it can mean that the government finally acknowledges there's a crisis, we might actually be able to fix it. But rest assured, if this government isn't willing to, we'll give people fresh options to do so next year.
How about these dog attacks recently? The Premier said that Marsden is convening a round table about this.
Yeah.
Had already been looking at it.
Well,
Should there be harsher
well,
penalties?
look, I welcome that, and I saw the Premier's comments on that, and I think that's fair and reasonable, and all levels of government should look to do all they can. My only question would be, when did that task force last meet, and what results came out of it, and how did we make the community safer by doing that? And that would be a fair and reasonable question for the government to answer, and it would be a way of making sure that ministers are held accountable for duties that they set. So I thought her comments were fine, and I think it's appropriate. It's important that people are held accountable for the duties that were set in the past as well.
David, you were also seeing the Premier's comments on the Voice today.
Yeah.
Will Queenslanders know your stance on the Voice?
When I have reflected on all of the information that's been put forward.
What
And,
information are you waiting for?
well, for a start, the Joint Parliamentary Select Committee to come back. That'd be that's a key part of it. And I saw some of the comments from Julian Lesser in regards to that, and I thought they were very good comments. And I want to go back, because I've been asked this the last few days. I want to make a couple of points. One is, all I'm asking is for people to conduct themselves with civility and decency in putting across different points of view, and for people to be open-minded to the reasons that are put forward. So that's my position. On the Premier and saying that, you know, about rushing to a decision, there are lots of Queenslanders who will take their time and make an informed decision, and I'm one of them. I'm one person who gets one vote in this. It's not a matter for the state parliament. But what I do want to do is set an example that this is important. Constitutional change always is, and you should be prepared to be open-minded, and you should be reflective. And if by the Premier's statement today there's a contrast between my style in taking my time and being reflective, and the chaotic nature that has led to crisis after crisis from the government, I think there's a case in point as to why Queenslanders need a different style of leadership, and that's always been my style. And I'll come to a position, and it'll be one that's been well informed, not a knee-jerk one that I've seen the government oversee in many of their things.
You may not have seen that on social media this week, John Brown made a post saying that Queenslanders should vote yes to show that we're rednecks.
You'd be stunned to know that I don't follow Don Brown on any platform. Best if I don't respond directly, because if I do, it'll inflame the situation. And what I don't want, and I think Fiona Simpson articulated it beautifully yesterday, there's no point to have two groups on different hills firing at each other. It's got to be reasoned arguments put forward in a considered way. And I thought the statement from Julian Lesser 48 hours ago was spot on in outlining the reasons, but also the class in which he put it. And what he also said is how well he thought his leader, Peter Dutton, had done, a completely different viewpoint. And we can get to that. Good people can have completely different reasons for coming to a decision, and they can each put forward those in a constructive way, and we'll be better for it as a state and as a nation. And I intend to make sure that I listen to all of those reasons, and I'm particularly looking forward to that committee reporting back. But there will be information put forward in the months ahead, and I'm urging Queenslanders to look at it with an open mind. It's important. Well, depending how much information is still to come. But look, let me be clear. My position will be clear to you, and I'm going to make my position public, Marlena. That's fair and reasonable. But there's not a vote for many months, and what I want to do by taking this stance is to say to all of those group of Queenslanders who are in the middle to listen to those who are making reasoned arguments on both sides. Don't get caught up in those kinds of comments. Don't be on both sides. There will always be people who seek to polarise views. Just listen to the reflective views and take your time. I'm absorbing information. So if your question is, have I made a decision? The answer is no. I'm looking at the information, absolutely, and I will continue to. And when I make a position, I'm going to articulate why, and I want Queenslanders to do the same. If this constitutional change and the opportunity to vote on it does one thing and one thing only, it would be amazing to see it be people getting back to a time when information is truly absorbed, and we've got time on this one, and I just want to make sure that there genuinely is civility in the way that people put their arguments forward, and the more reason those arguments, the more I'll be listening. And I think there'll be a whole bunch of Queenslanders who sit in the middle who haven't formed a view and will take their time to do it. And I think they shouldn't be branded one side or the other, and they shouldn't be pressured to make a knee-jerk decision. If they've got questions, ask them. And if there's more information, absorb it. And we'll come to the right view as a community.
Cool. Anything else, guys?
Thanks, guys.
Have
See you
a great
later.
day.
Thank you very much.
ADC, can I have the Quan? The Quan.